Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Reserved Investments, and thank you for joining me. So in this video, we are going to start our conversation on an overview of 12 of the hottest markets that make up the entire antiques and collectibles trade. Now, spoiler alert, all of these markets were chosen due to the amount of collectors, dealers, investors, and auction houses that cater to these markets, the size of the market by and large, which is what we call market cap, and also amount of collector interest in the year 2024. So these markets were chosen by me, but make no mistake, I have a lot of facts to back up my data, and I think a lot of antique purists out there and also pop culture collectors will agree with my assessment. Now, I have some good news and bad news before we go any further. If I were to sit here and do one full video talking solely about these 12 collecting categories, the video would be close to 2 hours long. So I am going to break up this video. The first part that you are watching right now is going to cover 5 of the hottest markets squarely on the antique, art, and antiquity side of the trade. Third-party grading does not exist or is not available in any of the markets we're going to talk about today. At a later date, within the next 2 weeks, hopefully, I will release the second part of this video where we will go more in depth on graded and also pop culture collecting categories. So I just want to be very fair to my viewing audience. If you clicked on this video because it popped up in your feed and you said, oh my gosh, a new Reserved Investments video, I want to warn you, all is what we're going to be talking about today is 5 of the hottest categories that make up the antiques side of the equation. Meaning all of these items are mature, established, sophisticated. They're 100 years of age or older because that's the simple definition of an antique. So now that I have your attention on that, if you don't want to watch this video, if you are squarely a pop culture collector enthusiast who only watches my content for pop culture collectibles, I will not get upset with you if you turn the video off. That said, those of you that truly want to learn the entire antiques and collectibles trade, this is going to be a great entry point for a lot of you guys. Now, before we go any further, couple of talking points. Number one, I did recommend this book in previous videos. This book is entitled Killer Stuff and Tons of Money. It was written by Maureen Stanton, and I think it came out right around 2011, maybe 2012, and it was written during the great financial crisis, or I should say the aftermath of the financial crisis. If you really want to learn the ins and outs of the antiques trade from a financial investment standpoint, you need to read this book. And if you are still one of the pop culture collectors that is hanging around this video, this book does talk about pop culture collectibles as well. It is a must read for anybody that wants to learn the ins and outs of the antique and collectible trade. Second caveat before we go any further. Always remember, guys, that antiques are squarely rooted in history. Collectibles are squarely rooted in nostalgia. Over the long term, history always beats nostalgia. I know that's very controversial. That is a fact that a lot of pop culture collectors cannot stomach. I'm just here to tell you the truth as to how these markets work. Always remember that. Third and final caveat. Please understand that today, we are talking about the hottest markets that make up the entire antiques and collectibles trade. And for the record, this video is being filmed in August of 2024. The only constant in the entire antiques and collectibles trade is change. At any given time, these markets can easily fall out of flavor. You need to be aware of that. This is why you cannot put all your money into antiques and collectible markets as an investment. You have to diversify. Investing in antiques and collectibles works best as a diversification hedge. It doesn't work if you're going to put all your money in these markets. Remember, there are no underlying cash flows in any of these markets. They are completely based solely on the greater fool theory. If you buy something for $100 and you see the markets going haywire and you consign that item to an auction company and you're able to get $400 for that item, congratulations. There was a greater fool out there, foolier than you, that was able to pay a premium for that item and you turned a profit. On the flip side, you can easily come into these markets. You can pay $100 for an item, consign it to an auction, and maybe it only sells for $40. Then you got slapped in the face with a proverbial donut and you lost your proverbial ass in the process. I am here to help you from getting slapped in the face with any types of food items, whether it be a donut, a taco, or a croissant. We don't want anybody to get slapped in the face on this channel. That's why you're watching Reserved Investments. Now that I said all that, let's take a deep dive into 5 of the hottest markets on the antiques side of the equation. The first market I want to talk about is the market for historical documents. Now, those of you that spend any time watching my previous videos, I get asked all the time, Sean, can you please do a video on historical documents? Can you please define what a historical document is? Here we go. Here's your definition. A historical document is a document or generally signed artifact that has historical significance or possibly alludes to history being altered in one way or another. It can also be something as simple as a document, a letter, or a quote signed by someone historically significant. Let's use this as an example. Believe it or not, during the Revolutionary War, George Washington, the first president of the United States, he was a very flawed person. Make no mistake, this is an individual that thought it was okay to own slaves. Just want to put that out there before we go any further. He signed, obviously, a lot of documents. And some of these documents that have his signature on them, they sell for hundreds, if not thousands of dollars. Regardless of what the document concerns, any of those documents that George Washington signed are considered historic by nature because he was a historic figure, especially in U.S. history, in the founding of the United States of America. Now, on the flip side, another document that you could get that sells for a premium, that is considered one of the most valuable artifacts to come out of the creation of the United States, is an original copy of the U.S. Constitution. So you can see when we start talking about historical documents, you can see the variance. It's a spectrum from the lower end all the way to the higher end. Now, if you're going to get into this market, certain documents will appreciate more than others. For instance, thanks to the popularity of the Oppenheimer movie, thanks to the mystique behind the Manhattan Project, I don't know if a lot of you guys are aware of this, Albert Einstein, on his deathbed, expressed a lot of regret that the United States used the atomic bomb to end World War II. And one of the famous letters that he wrote was written to Harry Truman expressing his dismay when that bomb was originally dropped on Japan, when both bombs were dropped on Japan. With that being said, that letter that he wrote to Harry Truman would carry a significant premium if it came up for auction. It would sell for millions of dollars simply because it was written by Albert Einstein, who is and was historically significant, and it went to a president of the United States who also was historically significant. Now, in that same caliber, Albert Einstein did write other letters, and he wrote other memoirs where he expressed his dismay of somewhat being a part of the Manhattan Project that led to the creation of the atomic bomb that was dropped on Japan. Those other memoirs and letters that he wrote that went to less historically significant people would obviously be worth a lot less than the significant letter that he wrote to Harry Truman. So there is a little bit of a scale, or I want to say spectrum, as to how important a historical document is that attributes to how much it's worth at auction at any given time. Now let's talk about the pros and cons of this market. If you buy right, if you know what you're doing, if you go through a trusted auction house, if you go through a dealer, You can make money in this market, usually over the long term though. Quick flips in this market are few and far between, unless if you really come into contact with a lot of historical documents on a regular basis, or you are a dealer, or you're already well known in this trade, meaning you're somebody that does hardcore traditional antiques and you know this market like the back of your hand. What you really have to be careful of, a lot of these items, they're hard to authenticate, number one. Condition can vary depending on the auction house used. They can be hard to appraise, especially if they're a one-of-a-kind item, and they can be very hard to store and maintain. There's a lot of risk that you are undertaking if you are choosing to invest in this market. Again, like all markets on the antique side of the equation, patience and research is your friend. That's how you make money in these markets. Now, there are a lot of auction companies that cater to this market. The four big ones that you got to be aware of course, you have Christie's, you have Sotheby's, but you also have Heritage Auctions, which is an adequate player in this market, and also Swann, SWANN auction galleries. Those are the four main players who are fairly known in this market. There are other auction houses. I just don't have time to go through every single auction house that caters to this market. So I'm just giving you four examples of the prominent players. You can do your own research if you want to get in this market. There is a lot of opportunity here, but there also is a lot of risk because remember, once again, this is a mature and sophisticated market. Now that I said all that, let's go to the second antique category we're going to be talking about today, and that goes kind of along with historical documents. We're going to be talking a little bit about rare first edition collectible books. Now, I am not going to linger on this collecting category for very long because I've already done several videos on this channel devoted to nothing but rare first edition books. Just know that if you're going to get involved in this market, the market can be very illiquid. You're looking for that buyer that wants the same book that you have an interest in. This is the opposite of vintage comic book collecting. This market is much more mature, sophisticated. There's no third-party grading operating in this market at all. You could literally have a book that one auction company describes as being in very fine condition. You go to consign it to another auction company. They look at it and they go, no, this is only in fine condition. There's a lot of nuance and idiosyncrasies in this market. You also have to be careful. Again, much like historical documents, if you are going after signed first edition books, the signature must be authenticated. You have to be very careful. You can't just take the dealer's or auction house's word for it, unless if it's a well-known auction house, unless if it's a dealer that gives you a money-back guarantee, meaning if they say, hey, I'm not sure if the signature is legit, if you go and get it checked out, if it comes back where the expert says it's not legit, I'll give you 100% of your money back. If you're working with somebody like that, you're good to go. Now, obviously, if you watch the show Pawn Stars, you already know one of the main dealers in this market. You ever hear of the company Bauman's Rare Books? There is a location in Philadelphia right near me that I have been to several times. That is a well-known, established dealer that operates in this market. They also, of course, have a location in Las Vegas, Nevada. So that is one example of a dealer you can work with. Now, a word to the wise. I will tell you, if you have the expertise, if you do your own research and you have the knowledge, you are usually better off buying directly at auction than going through a high-profile dealer like Bauman's. There's nothing wrong with buying through Bauman's books, but you have to realize that they normally pay a premium because they stand behind what they're selling. If they're going to offer you an item, it's going to be an item that they have extensive knowledge of. It's going to be exactly as described. There's going to be no question of authenticity. And with that type of knowledge and guarantee comes, obviously, a higher price tag. So you really have to do your research if you're entering this market. But this is, make no mistake, one of the hottest markets that make up the antiques and collectibles trade in the year 2024. The third market we're going to talk about, and believe it or not, I still get emails asking me if I will ever do a full-fledged video on this market. The market is firearms and edged weapons. Again, this is another one of the most sophisticated markets in the entire antiques and collectibles trade. You need to know extensive knowledge, not only in firearms and weapons, but also history. And you also need to know how to care and maintain for a lot of these firearms that you're going to be investing into. I will tell you right up front, it used to be 10 to 20 years ago, believe it or not, edged weapon collecting was not on par with firearms. Today, it honestly seems that they're going neck and neck. I see a lot of interest in historic edged weapons, almost as much as I see interest in firearms themselves. Now, something else that you got to be aware of, there is a such thing as modern era firearm collecting. There are certain firearms that were produced in the last 10, 20 years that are highly collectible. The problem is, if you are choosing to invest in that market, you must be aware of potential and ongoing regulation in that market. It is very important that you know what you're doing if you are going to start to collect and invest in modern era firearms. In my opinion, most of the money, most of the investment that you want to go after is in the historical artifacts, firearms, edge weapons, items that were really produced in the 1800s or earlier. Those are your best bets, but you have to be careful because there's a lot of fakes. There's a lot of reproductions. There's a lot of fantasy pieces, especially in the realm of edged weapons that fool a lot of novices. And there's also, of course, items that have a lot of undisclosed restoration. If you've ever watched an episode of Pawn Stars, you already know where I'm going with this. You have to be very careful. Even Rick, when he goes to buy one of these firearms, if it's of historical significance, if it's a high-value item, he will bring in an expert. And those episodes are always fun to watch. And sometimes he makes a deal, sometimes he does not. It's always better to err on the side of caution, especially when you're dealing with sophisticated markets in the antique side of the trade. Remember, this is not like pop culture collectibles. Completely different market variances. I've done videos on this, guys. So let's go to collecting category number 4, the market for investment grade art. Now, obviously, if you are an extremely wealthy individual, I'm talking someone with a net worth of $100 million, $1 billion net worth, this can be a playground for you. Most of us cannot afford to play in the higher end market for investment grade art because we're talking paintings, artwork done by the likes of Monet, Rembrandt, pieces that sell for hundreds of millions of dollars in certain cases. And here's a little bit of a trivia question for you. Do you know what the most valuable painting that could potentially ever sell for is? It would actually be the Mona Lisa. The Mona Lisa is not in private hands, so it will never ever, I don't want to say never ever, but it most likely will never ever come up for sale at auction. If that piece ever does come up for sale at auction, the pre-auction estimate is a minimum of $500 million all the way up to $1 billion or more. There are a lot of billionaires that would be willing to pay a premium to own the Mona Lisa, which is on display in, come on, don't make me say it, research it, come on. It's in display in France. Okay, guys? Come on, research this. Now, with this being said, you can enter the market for investment grade art with as little as $10,000. Now, I know I'm talking kind of like an elitist here. Sean just said we can enter the market with as little as $10,000. $10,000 is a lot of money. I understand that. But again, we're talking about investment grade art. Art that is purchased, that was produced by an already established artist. And right now, if you're talking contemporary art, you're probably going to spend $50,000 on up. I'm not going to lie to you. I have clients that operate in this market. They're going after Warhols. They're going after Banksys. They're spending 6 to 7 figures. So this is probably not a market for most individuals out there watching this video right now. I will tell you though, it is a very fascinating market. If you want to watch an excellent Netflix documentary that aired back in 2020, it's called Made You Look, a true story about fake art. That is an excellent documentary about the risks of buying investment grade art. If you are going to venture into this market, you want to work with either an established auction house or an established gallery/dealer. I will tell you, for most of my clients, they usually get better prices at auction because a lot of gallery owners, they buy at auction, they mark the piece up, and they sell it in their gallery. So it kind of makes sense. Now, there is actually a unique way that you can speculate in this market if you choose to do so. I don't recommend it. There's a lot of up-and-coming artists out there that will become very hip, very hot really quickly. If you are able to get in the ground floor of their offerings, as that artist gains momentum and more galleries recognize their work, art critics start commenting on that artist's works, the price will appreciate exponentially. The problem is trying to figure out who the next up-and-coming hot artist is going to be is pretty much on par with luck. It's on par with gambling and speculation. That's why I don't recommend too many people gamble on speculative art, because even speculative art is still going to sell for thousands of dollars, and there's no guarantee the price is going to appreciate, like going after a Warhol or something of that caliber. This is a fascinating market, though. If you want to see me do more videos on investment grade art, let me know in the comment section below, or you can also tell me to completely ignore this market because you have no interest in it. I do know I used to do a lot of videos early on this channel on art, and a lot of people came in the comment section. They were angry with me. They're like, what type of an elitist are you talking about markets where we have to come into this market with 5, 6, 7 figures to make a splash? Sean, nobody on YouTube is watching the video to hear you discuss how to invest in 7-figure art. So I did get a lot of hate comments whenever I did videos on art early on this channel. The last market we are going to discuss today is also considered by some to be one of the most boringest markets in the entire antiques and collectibles trade. And that is the market for antique furniture. If you really want to read a book that some of you will claim reads like stereo instructions back in the 70s, this book is for you. This is considered to be, as it's called, a masterclass in antique furniture. And this book was written by Thomas M. Clark. If you really want to learn the ins and outs of the antique furniture market, spoiler alert, some of you will not enjoy this market, as I've already said. But however, this is the book for you. You can get this rather cheaply on Amazon, on eBay, wherever books are sold. This is probably still readily available. You can even get yourself a used copy. Now, this is, believe it or not, a very sophisticated market. In fact, it's talked an awful lot about in this book that I already recommended at the beginning of this video, Killer Stuff and Tons of Money. Antique furniture is the backbone of the traditional antique marketplace. Just so that you guys are aware of that. When people are sometimes visioning what antiques are, they usually think of old pieces of furniture, and they're not exactly wrong in certain cases. The market for antique furniture is pretty much one of the most desirable markets for antique enthusiasts and purists. It's also one of the hardest markets to learn. There are a lot of reproductions. There's a lot of pieces out there with undisclosed restoration. There's a lot of pieces that are being sold as something they're not because certain pieces sell for more in this market than others. So you really have to be careful. Even auction companies and well-known dealers sometimes get this market wrong from time to time. So it is really a very, very sophisticated market with a very high learning curve. Now, with that being said, the market right now, if we start talking about mid-century modern furniture, that market's doing very well at present time. If we start talking about brown furniture that was produced in the 1800s, early 1900s, that market is very weak at present time. The market for antique furniture is very cyclical. It actually goes in cycles. So if you buy right, you hold the pieces for very many years, you can make money in this market. But again, it is considered a very boring market by most. Most of my pop culture collectors that watch this channel, I don't think they're going to be investing in antique furniture anytime soon. You guys can prove me wrong. You have access to the comment section. Now, another thing you do need to be aware of if you get involved in this market. Obviously, certain pieces of antique furniture, as you can imagine, are very big, bulky, and heavy. If you are going to invest, if you are going to buy these pieces, you have to store them, you have to maintain them, you have to keep them in collector condition. That's where the money is. In my opinion, I will tell you, most of the people watching this video would be better off ignoring this market unless you really, really want to learn about antique furniture. For the record, I know a lot about this market. My mentors really trained me in antique furniture, so I can identify certain styles of antique furniture like Chippendale or Sherwood, whatever it is. But overall, I do not play in this market particularly. I do not really like antique furniture. There are certain segments of the market I like. I like Gothic furniture. I like Victorian era furniture. That is, in case you're unaware, if you've ever watched a vampire movie like Underworld, usually that's all done in Victorian decor. That's a subset of antique furniture collecting. So I do like certain markets, but it's really not my thing. If you guys look behind me, this bookcase here, this is a Billy bookcase that was pretty much offered through IKEA. That's where I got these bookcases. So I kind of failed at being an antique expert when it comes to antique furniture because I have some pieces of antique furniture scattered throughout my house, but not much, just because I'm really not into it. So that concludes the first 5 collecting categories. Again, I did my best on this video, tried to keep it under 30 minutes. In a subsequent sequel to this, we are going to be talking about 7 more collecting categories, and all of those collecting categories, big hint here, can be third-party graded. So what markets do you think are going to be in that video? I will see you in that video. And again, if you have any thoughts, feedback, or comments, please let me know in the video description below. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your attention, and I hope you got something out of this.